All right, so Black Clover has officially ended, and it's left a lot of people feeling like it's Disney-esque or just feeling unfulfilled in its ending. And while I'm a huge Black Clover fan, I definitely think it's an amazing shonen series. Does an absolute banger of a job balancing its cast with their motivations, and as well as keeping the story relatively in line with your typical shonen battle tropes, but also throwing in a few curveballs that makes things a lot more interesting than your typical run-of-the-mill cliché. But this finale obviously was rushed. Now, people need to understand, Yuki Tabasa, the mangaka, was dealing with a lot in his personal life. His wife and child had been hospitalized. Apparently, he had lost a close friend who had died. So he'd been going through a lot. And honestly, this is why they moved it back to Jump Giga. So for every quarterly release, so essentially you get a few chapters every 3 to 4 months. So essentially one chapter every month. And this has been going on since, I believe, 2023, if that makes sense. And so we're seeing the wrap up of the Wizard King / Lucius arc that's happened. Now, I'm gonna agree with you. This ending definitely felt rushed. Now, I am not mad at this. It's not as bad as, say, Chainsaw Man ending, where there was essentially a contrived ending where the author tried to give everybody a happy ending while undoing several character plot points that needed to be addressed. But no, this was a good ending, Disney-esque, so to speak, but still not a bad ending. So here we are, Black Clover chapters 390 to 392. And we pick up immediately 6 months later after the battle against Lucius. All right, 6 months after, right? During the final battle with Lucius, Asta and both worked together to take him down, and Julius regained control of his body and used his time magic to essentially just undo everything that happened over the course of the battle, including not only all potential deaths, but also people who've been mortally wounded and dying. So Marileona and Jack survived. So Marileona and Jack fans, you are A-okay. All right, and so the chapter starts off with people clamoring in the capital saying, okay, who's going to be the new Wizard King? Who's going to succeed Julius? Because we, as the audience, know that it was public knowledge that Julius was taken over, and so now they're fearing who's going to be the new Wizard King. And so you have people debating over Asta and because of the battle. They're both giving amazing speeches, and so now people are like, okay, who's going to be the new Wizard King? All right, and they come to conclusions saying, hey, without Asta's anti-magic, we'd be screwed. But then they'd be like, hey, if Yuna wasn't using his spirit and wind magic, we'd already be dead before then. So, and then we see a shot of Yami and Ichika both wearing festival attires, and it's nice to know that they've reconnected their sibling bond after some miscommunications and alleged fratricide and homicide that had taken place in the last arc. So we see that, and Yami explains that everyone, even the captains, aren't sure about what would happen, and both he and Vengeance were both fighting over who would be the Wizard King, Asta or Yuno. So in the end, they decided we're just going to do the shonen battle thing and let these two fight it out. All right, we're just going to let them throw hands and just see what happens. All right, just duke them up. All right, and whoever wins, Asta and between this final battle, nobody will complain, nobody will get upset. They'll just suck it up and deal with it. All right, and the whole country's watching. This isn't some private battle. This is being live streamed with the magic communication devices across the entire Clover Kingdom and probably the whole continent. Everybody in the Spade, Heart, and Diamond Kingdoms are also watching this battle as well, because Asta and have made friends throughout their time in all those countries, and the fact that is technically the Spade Kingdom Prince, so they're probably trying to make sure he doesn't want him to win because they don't want his loyalties to be conflicted. But then again, in medieval societies, you actually would see people being the head of two different countries. It wouldn't be unusual to see somebody be the king of Hungary and Czechia at the same time, but tangent, unrelated, doesn't matter. And so we cut to the battle, all right? And then we see this gorgeous, just amazing double-page spread of Yuna and Asta facing each other down. Now, I know Naruto fans are immediately going to be like, this is cap, all right? They're ripping off us. Okay, and I got news for you, Naruto fans. I'm a Naruto fan. I love the series. This is not this is a thing that goes back to even Dragon Ball, okay? Two MCs, two rivals staring each other down on a double spread. It tales all this time. And one of the things that kind of annoys me is people bring up, oh, this is basically Naruto and Sasuke like-esque. I'm like, okay, Naruto and Sasuke's relationship was vastly different than Asta and Yuno's, right? They had very different understandings and motivations that made them who they were. And to compare the two just seems like lazy thinking on my part and lack of reading comprehension. Again, Asta and Yuno were essentially raised together as foster siblings, and yeah, they like to rag on each other sometimes, but they are very close and have each other's back no matter what. Versus other examples like, say, Goku and Vegeta, or Deku and Bakugo, or even Naruto and Sasuke, there is always a lingering jealousy and resentment and inferiority complex to kind of undermine that relationship. Say what you want about them, they have each other's backs, number one, and they are ride or die no matter what, all right? And Yuno was the first person to ever acknowledge Asta as a worthy of being his rival, all right? Even before he had the OP devil anti-magic, all right? And so they both reflect on their lives, the battles they fought, the people that they've been, all right? And they kind of look back and remember everything they've been through has been leading towards this moment, because in chapter 1, they said, hey, let's see who becomes the Wizard King first. Let's fight it out. And so they both smile and say, all right, let's go. Ice up, fight up, let's put him on. And so Yuno charges up a wind spell, and Asta immediately deflects it with his Demon Slayer sword. Then Asta jumps into his black mode and attacks Yuno. Yuno uses his spirit dance to avoid it. He fires a bunch of attacks at wind blades at Asta. Asta turns into a black tornado and just spins it around, avoids all of it. All right, and then Asta decides to use out his Demon Destroyer sword to seek out and destroy the effects of what essentially is Yuno's star magic and his gravity fields that are pulling things apart. And so Asta undoes that. Yuno then fires up a spirit arrow again, just directly at Asta's tornado, and he then peers in front of Asta, tries to snipe him again with an arrow, and Asta immediately dodges it, and then he tries to go in for an attack, and then you see the first chapter ends with this amazing, just absolute gorgeous page of Asta and Yuno in what essentially is a just clash of an anti-magic katana and Spirit's Zephyr sword. All right, so the next chapter, all right, 391, we see Asta and Yuno just in a blade lock. All right, and now this leads to the question, okay, how can Yuno survive a blade lock against Asta? All right, Asta is not only physically stronger, but anti-magic just destroys anything on contact. He's in his devil union mode at this point. And so people in the background, particularly Leo, are like, wait, how is it possible for Yuno to do this when he's using Asta's sword? And Fagolia interjects, and he's like, listen, he's basically pumping out mana 305%, all right? He's just spamming that shit like there's no tomorrow. He's blasting it, all right? And Asta's anti-magic, as powerful it is, has a set rate. So he's basically moving at a faster rate. To put it into perspective, it's like, say, for example, I'm moving at exactly 10 miles and you're moving at 5 miles, all right? No matter how hard you try to push it, there's only a limit to how fast you can go. So Asta's just speed isn't able to keep up with Yuno's at this point. And you see Marileona just smiling. She's just like, I could take both those little niggas on at the same time. And then we just see an absolute clash of them just like fighting above, and they destroy everything. All right, Yuno decides to just basically spam his star magic. All right, and this is basically just wrecks apart the entire battlefield. All right, and we've got more commentary from people like Jack, who's like the overwhelming magic speed. It just automatically goes to wherever it's looking at, and Asta is using his key skills to basically react and intercept where the attacks are going to come, and he'll dodge it accordingly. All right. And Yuno is not an idiot. Yuno is basically using these long-range star magic moves, essentially, to just blast Asta, because he knows in a straight-up slugfest, he would have no chance against Asta. So he's basically using his star magic as his advantage just to blast him, right? And he's also trying to use the very ground itself to throw debris at Asta, because Asta's one weakness has and always will be physical attacks, all right? Anti-magic can block any magic attacks. Physical attacks he is weak against. That is something he cannot block against, all right? Repeatedly throughout the story, he has been done in by people who've used physical boost attacks, all right? Now he's got a little bit of a loophole with his Devil Union mode where he can temporarily nullify any kind of magic on contact, but if you're just throwing boulders at him or you're choosing physical strength like some opponents have, you can overwhelm him, all right? And so Asta's using his key to just dodge and react accordingly. He's firing off his black slashes. And essentially, this battle becomes a marathon. This basically becomes who will outdo the other one first, all right? Will Asta's body fold under the pressure, or will Yuno run out of magic? One of those things is going to break first, all right? All right, and Yuno's been using his spirit magic, his star magic. He's been bringing down all these debris on Asta at this rate. There's no way he can keep this up in perpetuity. All right, and even people are like, wait, even with Asta's anti-magic, his body can't handle everything. He's going to run into a limit. All right, and so this becomes just basically a drawn-out marathon. Yuno uses his star magic again, but then Asta uses his Demon Destroyer sword to destroy the effects of it. All right, and then because he's being pulled by the star magic, so then he's like, okay, Destroyer, let's go. Then Yuno realizes this, okay, and then he gets into another blade clash with Asta, and then he uses star magic to hurl these two giant boulders at Asta, and then he basically uses them to disarm Asta. And without Asta's sword, he's basically defenseless. And then Yuno uses star magic once again to snap his fingers and summon this huge, basically, boulder on top of Asta, and it sends him crashing down. All right. This basically is similar to what happened in Asta's battle against Dante in the Spade arc, where Dante basically says, okay, I'm just going to throw boulders at you and see what happens. And we see Asta's reaction just freak out, like, holy shit, okay, this is bad. He realizes, okay, I'm in shit now. And so, just drops the literally calling on him. And we just see like this huge just bam effect that happens. And, if this was anybody else, the fight would be over. All right. They push their physical limits. They've tried to spam anti-magic 24/7. They have nothing left in the tank, and they get absolutely diffed. All right. But then Asta remembers his training in the Land of the Sun. He remembers what he learned from the samurai. He's like, okay, I'm up at here. There's got to be something I can do to save me. All right. And even Ghosh is like, if this was anybody but Asta, he'd be dead right now, all right? And then you see more commentary from Nozel. It's like, okay, this fight's over. He's done. He's reached his limit. There's no way he's got anything left to write. Well, we see, pardon me, in the next shot, a crack appear. And Asta says his favorite line, I'm not done yet. Our boy is still in this fight. He is still ready to throw hands. At the last second, Asta used Z10. If you don't remember what that is, that's basically a key technique he learned from the samurai in Hino country. I think it's basically just hockey or Kaioken. He basically uses his ki to increase his physical strengths or his magic attacks anywhere from 10 to 100 times. And he used it at the last second to basically burst through the rocks with his fist. And so Yuno realizes, okay, Asta's ran out of his dark form. He can't use Devil Union mode anymore. So I'm just gonna pin him down and wear him down. So Yuno charges at him with Spirit of Notos. But then Asta decides to code up his Devil Fist, his right arm that he had given up to Liba in this battle against Dante. He coats that with anti-magic and he shatters through Yuno's Spirit of Notos shield, right? He just smacks him right in the face and wrecks his shit, all right? Not only does that break Yuno's spell, but also makes him leave his spirit dive mode, and he shoves off to the floor, into the ground, all right? All right, and then Yuno tries to attack, but then he realizes, oh no, he's out of magic. Him spamming his spirit magic, him using Spirit of Notos, Spirit of Zephyr, Spirit of Boris. He's been using all this on top of star magic. He's been teleporting giant boulders to directly hit Asta, and he has basically run out of magic. Now, if this was anybody else, they would be done. They'd used up all their magic, they're cooked, they're finished, they're not done. But not Yuno, because Yuno decides to summon one last Spirit Blade, all right? And they thought he was out of magic. But then everybody comes to the conclusion, oh, wait, it's Yuno, all right? He is favored by the mana. He's beloved by the mana. He is a human royal of the Spade Kingdom with the soul of the half-elf, half-human Clover Royal of Licht and the first Wizard King's sister. And so Yuno has basically been beloved by mana his whole life, all right? And then it becomes a final clash. Asta takes out his katana. All right, and he summons the Demon Slayer sword, the sword he got from Yami, and it's a clash that happens, and his actual Demon Slayer sword, and then he takes it and he shatters through Yuno's sword, and then he basically has Yuno pinned down on the ground with his blade above Yuno's neck, and he just says, and it just, Asta's the winner. Yuno's like, I give up, you win. And Asta comes to the conclusion, is like, the only reason why he was able to keep chasing his dreams because he was here with him. Now, people need to understand, Asta and Yuno's relationship has always been about who's going to be the best first Wizard King first and who's going to get there first. And they've always been competing to push each other to do better throughout this story. That's what their relationship is. And despite people might say, oh, this is basically Naruto and Sasuke at Final Valley Part 2. No, Yuno never once in his entire character, go back and reread those chapters, ever mocked or looked down on Asta. Yeah, they would make fun of each other at times like friends do, like your brothers do. That's totally normal. But Yuno never once mocked or disrespected Asta. And they never really had a relationship that at any point got twisted out of petty jealousy, inferiority complex. Yeah, they both felt that the other one was ahead of them. Yuno remembered back in the beginning of the Lucius arc, felt that Asta was always one step ahead of him. And Asta, after getting beat by Lucius early in the arc, realized, I'm always behind Yuno. Maybe Yuno could have stopped him from taking Sister Lily. who knows what would have happened. So they both obviously have some kind of insecurity there, but it's not towards the other, it's more towards themselves and their own perceived weakness and failures. Comparing this to Naruto and Sasuke, where Sasuke basically for much of the series never really considered Naruto serious or mocked him repeatedly, or say for example in My Hero Academia, it takes well until let's say towards the final arc where Bakugo finally apologized to Izuku towards all his harsh actions and bullying as well as belittling him, alright? It's not until the end of Dragon Ball Z that Vegeta finally gets over his own insecurities and acknowledges Goku is the better man between them. So this basically comes down to the fact that we're looking at two different people who are essentially foster brothers who spent their whole lives competing to be the best, pushing each other to do better. And comparing this to other shonen series, yeah, I know there's going to be con parallels. That's fine. But to say that this is like ripping off any of those innings is completely missing the point of Black Clover. This is a very different series and does a great job of just introducing these characters and seeing the relationships in a healthy way without making it being toxic, all right? And so that's 391, all right? We're heading straight to the last chapter, 392, all right? And this one's basically the wrap up on who's boning who's shipping who gets where. And yeah, we flash forward to 2 years, all right? 2 years after that, all right? So it's now been 2.5 years after the battle against Lucius, all right? And we are now essentially in Hodge Village with Father Orsi, all right? Father Orsi is the priest / father who at the orphanage who essentially raised Asta and Yuno. All right, and he's basically glazing the hell out of them. He's like, this is right here in the church where Asta and Yuno grew up, where both of the two great mage rivals vied for the title of Wizard King. All right, they've been competing since childhood in the shadows of the bones of the legendary demon in the first statue of the first Wizard King. If you remember right, Asta and Yuno's village is literally just outside the ancient demon of Lake's corpse. And the first Wizard King statue is actually Lumiere, the first Wizard King who was sealed away by Secret. All right, and then we just see basically people, Father Orsi basically trying to sell the hell out of this town as well as its food and say, hey, this is the fried Nomo steaks and delicacy made for a young cook made in the village. All right, and honestly, we also have more of Asta and Yuno's childhood friends from the orphanage telling them to stop. And then we also cut away to Nash, all right? Nash is going with Sister Lily. If you remember, Nash is one of the older orphans that Asta and Yuno left behind, and he says he was going to become a Magic Knight after Asta and Yuno joined the Magic Knights, and so puberty hit him hard because that boy had a growth spurt, all right? He is now taller than Sister Lily, and he's about 15 years old, and he's ready to join the Magic Knights. We then cut away to Gauche and Marie. I gotta say, Gauche is probably one of the more weirder characters I've seen. A guy who is completely obsessed with his sister, who's basically a siscon, all right? And Gauche is freaking out because he's begging his sister Marie not to join the Magic Knights because it's incredibly dangerous. But Marie's like, nah, bro, I was motivated because I saw how great you were as a Magic Knight, helping people, all right? All right, and she basically says, I'll be fine. You go to have some tea together or something, right? And she's pointing to Gauche and Gray. And Marie leans over and tells him, bro, I hate to break it to you, but no woman on earth is ever going to date a guy who's a siscon, okay? Okay, please. No woman will ever date a siscon. So you better, for God's sakes, lock up Gray, all right? She's the only woman who will ever date you, all right? Please, don't F this up. Gauche, don't fuck this up, all right? And you mustn't let her go no matter what. And then we see a cute little moment with Gauche and Gray, and we know Gray had some feelings for Gauche, essentially, because Gauche apparently was the one who first saw her when she ran away from home, from her abusive stepmom and step siblings. If you don't know, Gray's basically just Cinderella. She basically was like that. And so obviously she ran away, she met Gauche, and Gauche kind of, sort of for lack of a better, accepted her for her appearance and told her if she isn't ready to take life seriously, she should go back. All right, and then we have some cutaways to some other elves who've also met or wanted to join the Magic Knights. If you remember, at the end of in the middle of the Spade arc, we learned that Tatia, that's right, the first Wizard King's sister, who was also Lick's wife, managed to survive the massacre of the elf tribe and went away to have a child, and through that child, essentially created a whole new line of elf-human hybrids. And so now we have a new race of human elf hybrids, the descendants of Licht and Tatia, joining the Magic Knights, all right? And that's a nice little wrap up elves had beef with humans for centuries, and now they're returning. We then cut away to Charlotte and Sol. Sol making a remark that a bunch of the new Magic Knights recruits are tough, and she can't wait to see what they do this year. Charlotte then decides to cut away to the back. She then remembers what happened exactly shortly after the battle between us and 2 years ago. And then we see her, Asta, Sister Lily, Charlotte, and Ichika all leaving. And if you remember right, Sister Lily was left behind in Hino Country after she was made a paladin because her mind had been warped, and until Lucius was defeated, she couldn't move at all, even after Asta had defeated her, all right? And so then we see Marileona on the deck of the ship. Apparently, Asta told her, hey, there's this dude named Yosuga who wants to smash. He's available. You need to get on that, right? Get on that. And so then we see Yami telling his sister, hey, be careful on your way back. And he's like, although I'm not sure there's much to worry about, because although I wish we had more screen time with Ichika and Yami to find more what their sibling dynamic was like, but no, we just see them. All right, and Ichika tells her brother, all right, I will be. And he tells his sister, hey, listen, tell Ryu I said hi, and he plans on visiting the Hino Country more back. If you remember right, Yami was exiled from the Hino Country, essentially because he was the fallen man for the clan massacre that happened 17 years ago. But now that Ryu is the Shogun, he can get him off the hit list, and he can go visit anytime he wants. We then see Ichika give Charlotte a magic device. Now, if you're like me, you always wonder in the back of your mind, wait, how could Asta in Hino Country understand their language? That didn't make any sense, because Yami, who came to the Clover Kingdom years ago, didn't understand anything. So he needed somebody to help him understand it, and that was Julius, who taught him the language and how to read and write and everything. So there was this magic device that basically was pinned on Asta by one of the Ryus in 7, and it's basically carrying it will let him understand the language, and as well as people to understand what he's saying and what you're saying back, all right? And then Asta remarks they had put this on him without him knowing. And then we have this very, very heartwarming moment between Charlotte and Ichika. Charlotte's like, listen, I hope you visit the Hino Country soon, big sister Charlotte. And that's just an adorable expression, because Charlotte all flustered is like, wait, hold on, no. I'm just dating your brother. We're not married. And Yami, in a very Yami way, bluntly tells her, he's like, oh, really? I was hoping for something long term. I'm already thinking about the future right now. And Charlotte, in a very Charlotte-esque response, was like, "Oh, that's good. That's good. That's very, very good. I'm sorry. That's very good." And we have an adorable comment by Ichika saying, "Oh, she's so cute. All right, brother, you gotta lock that down. All right, she's a keeper. All right." And so then we just see that little wrap up. All right, and then essentially we see Asta basically telling her that this is all nice to hear, and he's surprised about the new Beauty and Beast couple between Charlotte and Yami. Yami immediately takes offense to this and is like, who are you calling a beast, you little shit? Huh? Me? Yami, not like being called a beast, overreacts and proceeds to claw Asta's brains out like he's still a newbie. Asta points out, hey, I'm the Wizard King. You shouldn't be disrespecting me. And Yami's response is like, listen, I don't care if you're the captain. I don't care if you're the Wizard King. I don't care if you're the freaking Emperor of the Universe. You're still a runt to me, a permanent runt. All right, and then Ichika gets ready to leave, and she says, I'm looking forward to the future of this land. If you need anything, just lend me a hand. All right, and Yami, and one last dig at Alice is like, listen, I'm quitting. What? Yeah, I'm going to be an independent magic knight. There's no way I'm working under you. Fat chance in hell that'll ever happen. All right, and then we just see, he says, I'll create a new squad, a special magic division that basically lets me the freedom to do whatever I want. And so then he decides to leave. He's retiring as captain. And Asta's like, wait, that's going to make things hard for me. Wait, no, honestly, that might actually make things a little easier for me, all right? And then we have Sol in the present time after Charlotte's done remembering this comment. So how's your husband, Yami? So Yami and Charlotte are officially married, all right? And then we cut back to the Black Bull's base. We all remember that, right? Well, we see a absolute funny scene with Noct, who obviously he's vice captain, second oldest member of the Black Bulls. Him being captain makes complete sense. Him cut back, him doing some work, and a drunk Vanessa just strolls in and says, hey, Captain, it's almost time for the Magic Knight's entrance exam. And Noct, just face palming, is like, oh, God, these people every day today. Why am I surrounded by these idiots? And so Noct, working, is like, all right, if you know that, then put down the liquor and help me with this. She's like, oh, okay. Oh, you look busier. I'll leave it at that. And then she just proceeds to go and tries to hug him. And then there's a huge explosion that breaks out. And it's basically Magna and Luck basically having their usual pissing contests. And Magnus saying he's going to defeat Luck once and for good. And Luck is basically trolling him. He's like, hey, man, take your best shot. Take your best shot. And then Nock shows up, teleporting in because he has shadow magic. He can creep in any shadow. And he's like, will you please stop wrecking our house? Please, just stop. Just stop trying to blow shit up. Could y'all just take this shit outside for once, please? And just like he's basically in Yami's shoes, and he's going to find out the hard way that, hey, this is a lot harder than it looks. Yami had made it look very easy keeping these idiots in line, all right? They are a rowdy bunch, and they need a firm hand to keep them in check. All right, and then you see this huge explosion happen, and then you have Zora basically saying, thanks for helping me test my new trap magic spell, you guinea pigs. And then you have Magna just smiling at his big broken Zora. He's like, good one, Zora. And then Luck is like, hey, man, that's nice. I like it. Sounds great. And then you have Nock, who's just like, oh, God, you people. You are the biggest problem kids I've ever seen. I am so ready to kill all of you right now. You just see Nock. And then you see a very heartwarming scene with Henry and Gordon, two of the very quietest people in the whole crew. And then they're playing cards. And then Henry's like, hey, Gordon, what should I pick next? Because Gordon is still cursed. That's right, folks. Gordon still has his curse. He still talks very slowly. And then Gordon mumbles after Henry was studying for a long time. He's like, no matter what you pick, we're still going to be friends that will last forever. And that's just a heartwarming scene because at the end of the day, Gordon's whole thing while he joined the Black Bulls was just to make friends. I mean, he looked very different. His family was from curse users, so they were shunned. And so he just wanted to make friends. And so then he met Yami, and then he has friends. Henry's whole thing, he was basically abandoned. His mom had curse that's killed anything near him. And so he basically hung around the Black Bulls because they were the only people who would accept him for who he was. And then you just cut away to the next scene with Finral, who is just overjoyed at the fact that he is going to be a dad. He has apparently kept his promise because at the end of the Elf arc, he had made a promise to Lady Finnis and his brother Longris that he would become the new leader of Clan Vod and he would be the one to marry Finnis. Well, he worked hard, he got his reward, all right? He was made head of the clan and he was able to marry Finnis. And the two of them are now expecting a child on the way. All right, and now he's still a member of Finral, still a member of the Black Bulls, all right? He's finish up fast and come home, work early every day, all right? All right? And then he makes the remark from that toxic company of mine. So essentially, yeah, Finral basically coming to the realization he's now a family man who works for a toxic company, which, if you know anything about Japanese, particularly work culture, it can get very toxic to the point where they work their employees so bad, they sleep in the offices and don't go home. So maybe this is a play on Tabata's words saying, hey, the Japanese culture or the manga industry is just very toxic in general, and he's just sick of it. And then you have Finnis just sitting in her, basically what counts as the 8 months pregnancy. She's like, all right, dear, just make sure you get home safe and sound, and you come home early every day, so you should be fine anyway. And so then you have Longris just sitting back. He's like, so I get to be an uncle. And I guess he's glad they worked through their issues because Longris did try to kill Finral, but that was under elf influence, so we'll just scrap that aside. But that's not the biggest surprise. The biggest surprise to me in this arc, in terms of all the shipping and the Disney romance crap, isn't Finnis and Finral. It is Charmy and Rill. Because Finral thinks back, he's like, who would have guessed she'd have been a parent before I was? And then we have Charmy in her human form with Rill and their 7 kids. I'm going to say that again. 7. It's been 2 years. In case you didn't remember, Rill fell in love with Charmy's human form when she battled him when he was possessed by an elf and saved him by defeating him in combat, and so he's basically was in love with Charmy's human form. He didn't know that was Charmy. It been pointed out by Asta. It's like, hey, that's Charmy you're talking about. No. Charmy's a short cake. My woman is a tall, beautiful woman. I'll be worthy of her. And so apparently they got together. They've been married and they had 7 kids. Again, 7 kids. It's been 2 years. I'm bad at math. I suck at it. Never happened. But you're telling me y'all had 7 kids in 2 years. That means you've had quadruplets. And triplets basically once every year. Or you had basically sextuplets and 1 child. Alright. And a pair of twins. I'm sorry, but there's no... They're trying to rebuild the dwarf race. Alright? and they're just trying to rebuild the doorway. They're just smashing to repopulate the dwarf race. All right, they're just trying to do it. All right, and then you see like this little scene with Rill's butler telling him, "Oh, young master, bottle feeding your own child. I'm so happy." And Walter, who was not only Rill's butler but also his mentor and guardian figure, he's like, "Oh, come on, Walter, I'm a dad now, all right?" And then you essentially see one of Rill's subordinates telling him it's time for the magic night exams. "Oh, right. Okay, I gotta go, honey. I'll be back, Charmy." And then, Charmy reverts back to her dwarf form, which is, you know what? They say in love, it's better being pursued than being the pursuer. Because if you remember right, Charmy had a massive thing for but apparently she's gotten over it because she found out being chased is a lot better than being the chaser. All right, we then cut away to everyone's favorite shipping war between Noelle and Mimosa. Listen, we all know Noelle and Mimosa are Asta's biggest simps, all right? Noelle more of the tsundere side of things, and Mimosa more of the kundere side of things, or sweet side of things, if we're being accurate. And so they both are commenting on each other, saying, "Hey, it looks like this guy's finally settled to being the Wizard King." Obviously, they're referring to Asta. And they both come to the conclusion, yeah, it's really surprising. And, they also comment on the fact that, hey, did you hear the news? Lolopechka and Gaja are now officially married. So, another little shipping thing. Gaja from the Heart Kingdom confesses love to Lolopechka, queen of the Heart Kingdom, and they are now officially married. So, kudos to them. Congratulations. We know who's boning who. And then we cut away we also have wonderful news from Mimosa, and they also mention apparently Mary Leona is now being courted in his country. By who exactly? Yeah, Mary Leona apparently was told by Asta, saying, "Hey, there's like this really strong people in Hino country. You should totally go there." Because if you remember, towards the end of their battle against the Paladins and the 500 Dragon, Yosuga, the strongest member of the Ryuzen 7 of the samurai, a lieutenant for the shogun, and Ryu's rival, a guy who's iron magic, approached Asta and said, "Hook me up with some fine-ass fire bitches from your country, all right? I need to get some." Yeah, apparently he is getting himself some, all right? Listen, and Mary Leona, apparently, according to Zabata, her type is a man who can survive a fight to the death with her. So, yeah, she's literally melting his iron. Yeah, we're just finding out who's boning who, all right? This is literally the point of this chapter, right? This is what it's for. All right, and so then they both are kind of talking more, Mimosa and Noelle, and they said, "I was late. I was waiting until work was finished, or thing cools down as the Wizard King, but I'm gonna let you know I'm pursuing Asta now." And Mimosa's like, "That's fine, Noelle. I won't lose to you either, all right?" All right, and they said, "Hey, well, we'll see you again later. All right, why don't we get some dinner, all right?" And she says, "My, that sounds nice. Maybe I should one of my brothers something too. Bring my brother something too." Mimosa's brother Kirsch is now apparently captain of the Coral Peacocks, so those two decide to go off and have a nice dinner. Maybe they may be rivals for Asta's love, but they are still cousins and they are still friends. So take that for what you will. We then have cut of Secret. Secret, friend of the first Wizard King, had been there during the Elf Massacre 500 years ago, had been a bird for centuries. All right. She then looks over at us, Noelle and Mimosa, and she's like, "You know what, Lumiere? The country you wanted to protect is still here. It's still there." All right. And then we see cut shots of all the side characters we've met. We see apparently Damnatio still being a real prick. We see Fergolion. We see Jack. We see the Eye of the Midnight Sun. We see Noelle finally having... Okay, side note. I'm sorry, but Noelle's relationship with her siblings just whacked me. They treated her like shit for years. And granted, they apologized and tried to make things right and get the battle against their mom, but that has always bothered the hell out of me, how quickly that was kind of like just from Noelle's perspective, because usually like you go through and have an abusive relationship with a family member. Obviously things are complicated, but just for it to be so quickly resolved, obviously this feels Disney-esque in that sense, because usually when there's conflict, I think of like My Hero Academia with Endeavor's family. All right, his kids, it took a long time to approach him, and even then Todoroki and Shoto and Natsu, they never really got over their dad's bullshit, and they were just like yeah, no, we don't want anything to do with this. Now, Shoto obviously eventually got up to the point where he could accept and forgive and move on past his dad for his own sake. But Natsu, to his dying days in My Hero Academia, was like, no, Dad, I hate you. I don't want anything to do with you. Adios. So it's just weird to me that Noelle can just make so nice with her siblings after everything that's happened. But okay, fine, whatever. It is what it is. We then see a kind of shot of Dorothy, who is now apparently the queen of the witches, and the previous witch queen with the blood magic apparently stepped down after she used up all her power to teleport Asta from Hino country to here. We see a wedding between what is Fauna and Mars from the Witch Forest arc, how they got married after traveling the world together, so kudos for them. We see Gaja and Laura Pechka. We see the Spade Kingdom soldiers. We see Vengeance go over towards his BFF, his soul brother / boyfriend Patri in the Forest of Elves. So more happiness around. And then we see Yuno, who's basically now not only captain of the Golden Dawn, but he's also doing duties in the Spade Kingdom, helping them. And so now he then says he's talking to most likely his vice captain. All right. And he basically tells them, he's like, listen, all right, we have important work to do, Captain. We need to essentially pick our new section recruits, all right? And Yuno responds, yeah, I know it's Magic Knight entrance exam. We have new recruits to pick, but I want to make sure I pick people who have the guts to say they'll surpass me, all right? He's looking for guts, all right? Which is a very nice little callback because Yuno's whole thing why he liked Asta in the beginning was because Asta had guts, all right? And then you see the Magic Knight entry exam, and then you see an alert from essentially going on, saying the kingdom's currently under attack by a magic airship. All right, and people are like saying, "What's going on?" It's attacking the capital, and the Wizard King is already on his way. And then you see all the Black Bull members and Yami sigh, be like, "Oh, of course he is." And you see Yami decide to head out with the Special Reserve Corps. Apparently Yami's special forces now, so kudos. And you see a cute little shot of him and Adremalek. You remember him? He was the devil that partnered with Yami in the battle against Lucius, who has light magic, so he's still around. He's hanging around Yami, so kudos to that. And then you see them charge up this magic attack, and they say, see this flying kid. What's with this kid? He's got no magic. Who are you? And then Asta shouts in this amazing double-page spread, I am the Wizard King. And we just see him immaculately dressed, just fitted and just absolutely gorgeously dressed with the red robe and white fur and the black glove. And he's got these knee pads. He's got a big belt. It looks amazing. It genuinely looks absolutely stunning. And I will not hate on it no matter what. But the thing is with this arc is that, so then that's the final chapter, final page, end of Black Clover. And to kind of give you my thoughts on it, Black Clover is an amazing series, 100%. All right, animation wise, obviously the animation for it can be spotty at best. It has its ups and downs, but for me, the moments that I generally enjoyed most in this series was the fact that it did a typical, obviously followed a shonen battle format, but it did things in a way that really obviously you wouldn't expect. Obviously, the biggest plot twist in this series is the fact that the ancient demon was the first Wizard King's friend, Licht. Obviously, Asta's devil was not a malevolent force like, say, Sukuna or Kurama from Naruto. No, he was actually a very tragic person who had a horrible life that was just by a twist of fate. Him and Asta ended up together. Then you obviously have Yuno, who is not your typical shonen light rival. He is, but he isn't, because unlike him and Asta's relationship is very different from all those other examples. All right, and Black Clover does an amazing job of also telling issues. For example, one of the biggest issues is the status symbol, right? You see the Clover Kingdom is laid out like a jigsaw, with the noble and royalty at the top, with other people in the middle, and the commoner and peasant at the very bottom, at the outskirts of the kingdom. They have all the magic, all the status, all the power, and so then you have this really oppressive system where people are basically trapped and there's no way out. So you have this whole classist system that gets reinforced over the years, and different people have tried to fix it, but Black Clover constantly does this way of kind of addressing those issues and saying that it's always going to be your merit and your hard work to determine where you end up. All right, despite Asta and Yuno's difficult upbringings, they basically rose to the very top through hard work. Yeah, Asta got the busted anti-magic. Yeah, Yuno ended up with 2 magic attributes, Spirit and Wind, a Star and Wind magic, and they both had things go their way. But through their hard work, they were rewarded with their efforts. They didn't get there because they were rich and powerful. They got there through grit and effort. And that's something that Black Clover does an amazing job at conveying it. And it also does an amazing job of just like bringing in side characters and making them be relevant. Because one of the things in shonen series is side characters tend to fall by the wayside. All right, let's be real about this, okay? Nobody remembers, all right, the Konoha 12 and all their motivations unless you're a diehard Naruto fan. Listen, I love Naruto, but I cannot remember outside of a couple of them their motivations. I think I remember Rock Lee wanted to be acknowledged as a serious ninja with no ninjutsu. I think Neji wanted to be recognized as among the highest echelons of his clan. I'm trying to remember. I don't even remember what Shikamaru's goal was. I think he was just a lazy kid who didn't want to be a ninja, who was just too smart for his own good. Whatever. Black Clover does an amazing job of building these characters and just introducing them and making them relevant to the story. Now, with regards to the final arc, I think it was definitely rushed. I think, obviously, things could have been fleshed out. My biggest issue with the final arc was when Asta gets teleported to Hino Country. He's there for essentially about, let's say, about 10, 12 chapters. And we only see one brief corner of the country because they lay it out. And Asta essentially was in basically what is Japanese equivalent of Hokkaido. Hino Country in Black Clover is basically Japan shaped, literally. And so Asta was basically in Hokkaido, and he never went anywhere else. We didn't meet any other mages. We didn't see other regions. We just saw that one region. And that kind of annoyed me just because I was like, wait, we're in Japan. Well, Japan equivalent. We're just going to see one thing. Obviously, it was rushed there. My other issues was Julius coming back and using his time magic to undo all the damage. Bringing back characters like Mara Leona, who should have died. Jack should have died. Obviously, some of the shipping felt a little contrived with Ghosh and Gray. I'm sorry, that makes no sense. Ghosh is a sister con, and Gray chronically has got public speaking fears. So that comes to that. But other than that, like, it felt rushed, but I still love the series. And if you're watching this, please give Black Clover a shot. It's an amazing shonen series, and you will not regret it. All right, well, I'm Malik. God bless you all. Don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Y'all